Hello, welcome back to Nosferatu Films. It's your favorite disgrace to society, and for my first review in 2025, I'll be talking about Nosferatu, the 2024 remake by Robert Eggers. As some of you may know, I'm a horror fan. I started my channel talking about horror movies. Anyone who loves horror has at least heard of Nosferatu. It's one of the most influential films that shaped the genre. I watched the original 1922 version before the remake, which you can find on YouTube, and it's amazing how impactful the film is even after 100 years. I wasn't actually scared, but the film did make me nervous. The storytelling is very effective, and the eerie atmosphere is most impressive, especially considering it came out 100 years ago. Of course, it's not an easy watch. It's still a silent movie from 1922. Some might find it too slow, but I, for one, am very impressed. To be honest, I'm not a fan of horror remakes. I've watched my fair share. There were tons of them in the early 2000s, but most were just soulless cash grabs that failed to translate the original's charm. However, when I saw Robert Eggers' Nosferatu trailer in the theater, I was immediately drawn in by how ghastly and beautiful the film looked. It looked like it was made with love and care for horror, and after watching the film, I'm very happy to say that it's an exceptional remake. Eggers' Nosferatu generally follows the same plot as the original, but expands the story in meaningful ways. Many characters are given more significance to the story, such as the Harding family and the professor. In the original, the Hardings were just family friends of the Hutters, and the professor just appeared to make a few remarks about vampires. In the remake, they actively contribute to the story, making it more complex. Because of the expanded story, the remake is significantly longer than the original. However, the film is well-paced and keeps the audience engaged. For those who watched the original, like myself, it's foreseeable where the story would go, but Eggers made significant additions that keep audiences on the edge of their seats. The most important change to the story is definitely Ellen's role and her relationship with Orlok. Originally, it wasn't explained why Ellen would sleepwalk and dream of her husband at Orlok's castle. She did not have a particular connection with Orlok either. She simply read a book about vampires and decided to sacrifice herself to save the town. It was unclear why she did so. Maybe she did it to redeem her husband's sin of bringing Nosferatu to their town, or maybe she just did it out of the goodness of her heart. But in Eggers' version, Ellen has paranormal abilities and awoke Nosferatu in her youth. Being an alone and naive girl, she pledged herself to him, which is why the vampire is obsessed with her. He moves to their town and kills her loved ones to claim her, so Ellen sacrifices herself in the end to destroy him. Both versions have their charms. Watching the original is like listening to a simple but effective ghost story. Most of the details are left out, which makes it mysterious and nerve-wracking. On the other hand, the remake is like reading a detailed novel which ensures everything is explained and every character has their importance, leading to an engaging story. I love how simply eerie the original was, but the remake did make me more emotional. I was honestly quite touched when Ellen sacrificed herself in the end. At that moment, I felt like this was a love story instead of horror. It's moving how Ellen started out alone and misunderstood, leading to her connection with Nosferatu. But in the end, it's her love for her husband and those around her that propels her to make the ultimate sacrifice. It's really poetic how love eventually triumphs over death, as corny as that sounds. Again, I do love how simple the original is, which makes it more terrifying. But the remake does go deeper into the story, which makes it more touching. Thomas and Ellen's relationship is also fascinating. Their problems as a couple are pretty relatable. Thomas wants to make more money and get a better position to improve their lives, while Ellen just wants them to be together. But in the end, they love each other. Even after knowing Ellen's bond with Orlok, Thomas still loves her and is determined to kill Nosferatu to save her. Their love for each other is well presented in the remake, which makes Ellen's ultimate sacrifice more touching and Thomas' regret of failing to save her more heartbreaking. The other characters are also pretty strong. The Harding family participates in the story beyond taking care of Ellen while Thomas is away. Despite Ellen's weird actions due to her paranormal abilities, they try their best to help her. Although it's not explained how they became friends, you can tell from their interaction how much Anna cares about Ellen and how strong their friendship is. Not only does this make Anna's death more tragic, but it also demonstrates how evil Orlok is. As for Frederick Harding, although Ellen accuses him of hating her, I don't think he does. He tries to be as accommodating to her as possible, and in the face of something illogical, it makes sense that he wouldn't know what to do. And after what happened to Anna, it's understandable why he kicks Thomas and Ellen out. He represents how ordinary folks would react when such bizarre events happen. We try to rationalize things. It's understandable why he refuses to believe in Ellen and the professor, so I still feel bad for him when his family gets killed by Nosferatu. I honestly don't think he's a bad person, a bit arrogant maybe, but all he does is try to resolve the issues at hand. Of course, the most important character in Nosferatu has to be, well, Nosferatu. No matter how good the other characters are, the remake would be lackluster if the title character is not extraordinary. The trailers were careful not to show Nosferatu, building up the mystery of this evil being. After actually seeing him in the movie, I think he's fine. I do like the idea of making his body decay like a zombie's, but I'm really not a fan of the mustache. Orlok having a mustache is kind of funny to me and makes him less intimidating. I don't know, maybe it's because his body is rotting and he has no hair, but for some reason he has this well-trimmed mustache. It just doesn't fit with the rest of his design in my opinion. However, according to Wikipedia, Eggers' Orlok is partially inspired by Vlad Dracula, who did have a mustache. If that's the case, I understand why they added the facial hair, but I still think it makes him less scary. But other than his physical appearance, I would say Orlok is pretty intimidating. His voice is honestly so terrifying. It's amazing how Bill Skarsgård could talk like that. I love how they made him more authoritative and menacing than the original, which really demonstrates how he perceives himself as a superior being. To be honest, I didn't like Orlok having a special connection with Ellen at first. Sure, it explains why Orlok is so fixated on her, but the possessiveness also makes him seem somewhat human. However, the movie makes it clear that Orlok doesn't love her, he just perceives her as his property because of their bond, which makes sense and is in line with his character. Now that I've talked about the story and characters, let's move on to the most important thing in a horror movie, which is of course, the horror. To be honest, I was a bit worried at first because the film opened with a jump scare, which the original didn't have at all. The original Nosferatu manages to be unsettling even without any jump scares, so I was a bit unsure about how the remake has won almost immediately. For the record, I'm not against the use of jump scares. They can be quite scary if used effectively at the right time. However, many bad horror movies only use jump scares as a cheap way of stimulating audiences. It becomes tiresome if a horror film over-relies on jump scares. Fortunately, that is not the case for Nosferatu. While the movie does have quite an amount of jump scares, they're not the main source of horror. The film builds up this uncomfortable feeling with amazing cinematography and music. It's impressive how beautiful and eerie this film can be at the same time. Lily Rose Depp's exaggerated performance of possessed Ellen may seem a bit silly, but I think it's a nice return to basics for supernatural horror. While I wasn't exactly scared by the paranormal elements, it's never too over the top to the point that it becomes funny. Overall, I do think Nosferatu is an effective horror film that utilizes everything in the book. There are well-placed jump scares, a good build-up of eerie atmosphere, and simple supernatural elements. That's basically my thoughts on the Nosferatu remake. I don't think it's better than the original, but it's certainly more palatable for most audiences. I appreciate Edgar keeping the basic story of Nosferatu instead of changing it to something completely different. As I said before, the original has a compelling story despite its simplicity. And when the remake makes changes and additions, they're all reasonable and elevate the viewing experience. The film is beautifully shot and all of the actors have done a superb job. It's a very good remake and you can see their respect and love for the original. Hope you guys liked my review and nails. I did the Nosferatu logo, Ellen's heart-shaped locket, the shadow of Orlok's hand over the town, Alan's bleeding face, and the flowers Thomas gave to Alan. There's actually something special about this nail. It changes color! Isn't that cool? As always, like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, comment, share, do what you want. Keep nailing it and don't cite documents that you can't read, people.